All present and accounted for. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 11th, 2023 briefing. And this will be the briefing for the regular meeting coming up next week on May the 18th. We actually have 3 discussion items before we actually brief the agenda. And the first one is going to be just something we added today, which is it's part of a commemoration of today being the end of the COVID-19 emergency status nationwide. This is the federal end of COVID-19 emergency, not the end of COVID, but the end of the emergency declaration. And we had a ceremony commemorating that this morning over at the health department. And actually, it was very meaningful and very well done. It basically featured all of our partners who contributed, substantial amounts of time and energy and resources, all the way from our hospital system, certainly the business community, certainly the faith community, and within the county government and our part with the city of Winston-Salem, all of our city partners. But it also included all the county folks that did many things. I will not begin to do thanking everyone, but 3 of us were there this morning, and actually one suggested that we have one presentation that none of us had ever heard before. That's short, but it kind of brings us back to it's kind of the Forsyth County's ground zero for COVID, kind of our beginnings, and we thought it was a way to commemorate the close of that thing. We might just have Ms. Maura Trimble to come forward. She's a public health nursing supervisor, and she's just going to share a little bit of what she shared this morning, and she'll tell you kind of why she is the one that is actually doing this today. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you did the last 3 years, by the way.
You're welcome. Thank you all as well. I appreciate this opportunity. Today, as you said, marks the end of the federal declaration for the public health emergency. And but to throw us back in March of 2020, we had heard about COVID-19 coming out of China in late December. January, we heard it coming across the ocean. And then for us, we were tasked, a very small group of us, communicable disease nurses for the public health department, were tasked to monitor travelers who were returning from China and other countries. We were to call them every day for 14 days, check on their symptoms. They needed to keep a log that they would check their symptoms and their temperature twice a day. We would call them to make sure that they were okay. That went on for several weeks, and several people managed to get through those 14 days without incident. On a Sunday afternoon, I had notification that we had new travelers on our list. I called them, and I said, "Good afternoon, here's why I'm calling." And I said, "Are you having any symptoms?" And they said, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh, I hadn't heard that before." And they were having a fever. And I said, "Oh, okay, do you have did anybody else travel with you?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Are they having any symptoms?" And they went on to say yes, that they were having a cough. So this was new and unprecedented for us. It was the first time that we had somebody say, international travel, coming home with symptoms to Forsyth County. That was a Sunday. Monday, we took the opportunity to collectively get all the things we needed to do together, from getting the emergency, the protective gear that we needed, also going over to Wake Forest Baptist Hospital to refresh on collecting samples from the nasopharyngeal area and also the back of the throat. They had the supply, so they were gracious enough to share their knowledge. We also had to wait because the test kits, there were only 3 test kits for the whole county, so 385,000 people, and there were 3 test kits. So we had to wait for them to come in. So that put us into Tuesday. Tuesday showed up, we got the test kits. We went out, 4 nurses, public health nurses went out and collectively collected these samples that then resulted 2 days later in being our very first 2 identified cases, lab confirmed cases of COVID-19 here in Forsyth County. So we went from 2 on March 10th today to now at least over 130,000 cases that we know of in Forsyth County through lab confirmed cases. But of that, sadly, there's close to 1,000 Forsyth County residents who did not survive the pandemic and were lost to us. And I did want to take this opportunity to say that, in public health, we can only give demographics, basically numbers with descriptions. We can't tell you who they are, but know that as the reports come in, we see their names, we read their obituaries. We know that these were incredible parts of people's lives. They were threads of the fabric that makes up this community. They were loved ones, fathers, mothers, grandparents, sons, daughters, friends. They like to spend time with their family. They like to read books. They liked race cars. They liked to play the piano. And some of them had the most beautiful smiles. So knowing today is the end of the public health emergency declaration, today is not the end of those families missing their loved ones. So with that, collectively, they have the heart of our community, and our condolences for their loss. Lastly, I would like to thank the multiple partners that we certainly had, to the public health nurses, healthcare workers, and long-term care facilities and clinics and hospitals. These are the people that stood up to face down a virus that none of us knew what it was. It was a new novel virus to the whole world. And early in 2022, they have our respect, admiration, and appreciation, and they are public health. To the multiple partners that came together, from the school district to the hospitals to the universities, colleges, businesses, emergency care, fire, EMS, police, all of these partners came together to help with testing, masking, vaccinating, distancing, contact tracing, and just spreading the word on how to stay safe. Know that they all made a difference for us as well, and they too are public health. And lastly, for the residents, citizens, and individuals who live, study, and work in Forsyth County, who did what they could to minimize the transmission of COVID-19, they too are public health. But collectively, we're Forsyth County. Thank you, Dr. Martin. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you
all
so
the
much
titles.
for coming over and doing that. We really appreciate it. And by the way, I suspect within this audience, I suspect all of us know someone personally who died of COVID. And as we begin, I'd like to ask that we just take a brief moment of silence to recognize all the individuals who passed away, as well as their families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for taking a short notice, coming over and doing this.
My pleasure. Take care.
All righty. All righty. I'm going to just reverse one order. Our second item, we're actually going to have the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools budget presentation, because we have a number of folks here, school board members and Tricia McManus and Tommy Cranston. I think maybe Ms. McManus would like to start us off with the presentation, and we'll continue there.
Yep, we're going to kind of tag team it, so to save time, we'll both come up to start with. Thank you. I want to start, first of all, good afternoon, County Commissioners. Thank you, Dr. Martin, for highlighting the work of the Health Department. I just want to reiterate and thank them for helping our school district make it through those times that were very challenging. And they're an incredible partner. Their nurses are in our schools every day, and yesterday was National School Nurse Day, and so I really appreciate that you did that today, because it gives me, I actually might have left, but Joshua was at our meeting, our board meeting Tuesday night, and so was Brooke and some of the other nurses, and so we were very lucky. Also, Dudley, hosted, what was it, monthly, what is our group called? And Ashley, what was our return to...
Reopen Forsyth.
Reopen Forsyth, and those monthly meetings where we had entities from all over the county, that was really, really helpful. So thank you all for your leadership and during the pandemic. Thank you. So we are going to get started, and let's see. Let me get our PowerPoint pulled up. Should have started with that. Is it down here, Ashley? Down here? Is it ready to go? Yes, there we go. Thank you. Oh, go back to this. Share that window. Okay. Share. Thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you all so much for your time this afternoon. This is an exciting day for us to be able to come forward and present our proposal to you all. Our Board of Education approved our request Tuesday night, and so I would like to also thank them. I thank you, our board, the members that are in the audience. I think it's most of them, actually. Chair Kaplan, co-chair or vice chair Alex Bohannon. I see board member Kuhn, board member Miller, board member Watts, Board Member Brown Gaither, Board Member Crowley, and former Board Member Dana Caudle-Jones. So thank you all so much. And who else? Who did I miss? Oh, of course, former board member Wood. She's part of that family now. So but yes, thank you. But she understands this process as all of us do. And thank you, Nadine. Works with Tommy on a daily basis. And so Nadine, thank you for being here. She's a mastermind behind a lot of this as well, right, Tommy?
Yes, ma'am.
It's definitely a team effort. So we're going to get started. Some of this data we saw when we were here 2 weeks ago about Article 46, but I wanted to clarify one of the pages that we asked about with our free and reduced lunch, and so, or our economically disadvantaged slide. So once again, just to start us out, I'm not going to go over our vision and mission, but this truly does guide our process for creating our vision. What is it that's most important to our school district? And we do want to be a district of excellence. And I'm looking forward to getting our results at the end of this year and coming back to you, because we are seeing in a lot of our mid-year data, we are seeing growth, which is great. Our strategic plan goals also drive our request to you today. And so these are the 5 goals we're trying to meet. And so you're going to see that throughout our budget, not just local dollars, but all of our state and federal dollars as well. And then here are 3 big rocks that we focus on: learning, which includes instruction, culture, and talent. And so when you think about that, you're going to see this throughout the budget. These are the main priorities that we are focused on throughout the budget. When you think about our buildings and our grounds, that comes under that positive learning environment and culture. When you think about a big part of our request today, it's going to be in the area of talent. And you'll see that when we put forth our increased request because of our talent. And I know when we get to that part, you all will understand that, as you all also are working to keep your talent, and that you're working to recruit and retain strong talent, even for the county. So to go back in, these were our enrollment numbers when we came a few weeks ago. Just wanted to reiterate that. We are moving back up. Our projection from the state is that our students enrolled or that will be in school next year are back on the rise. And then here was the demographics that we shared of our student demographics, race. And so that just gave a background last week. We shared that with you as well. And then students being served through our exceptional education programs. And so that number, again, that number has not really made a drastic increase from 2017-18, but it was more of an increase back from 2013-14, 2015-16, an increase there. But we've kind of maintained that level of service. And then this was a slide that I think Mr. Bessie had asked about, like, did something change with our economically disadvantaged numbers? And so I do have a little bit of data on that for you I thought I could address today, which is one of the reasons I wanted to keep the slide in here. So in 2022, Medicaid was added in the formula. So that was the first time for Medicaid to be added in. And then also the household income of 4, the poverty level back in the 2021-22 data was a family of 4 was at 26,200, and it's now at 30,000. So that could have made a difference in those numbers, as well as in 21-22, all students were receiving free and reduced lunch. So that dip was because not all of our students were actually even doing the application, because every student received not free and reduced lunch, but free meals. And that was for a couple of years during the pandemic. So you can see now with our students all filling out the applications, with the household income raising, that is part of that uptick in the percentage to 68%. But with that said, we are increasing our numbers of students that are living in economically disadvantaged type of situations. Our multi-language learners continues to increase, students moving to the country. And so with all of these shifts over time, we have to allocate the resources. And I think that's what you'll see in the budget proposal, is that we are trying to make sure that we are properly allocating resources to meet the changing needs of our students. And I'm going to have Tommy go over the next few charts, and then I'll come back in for the request.
Thank you, ma'am. So we start off, to give you an idea of our expenses as we spend them in FY22, and you would ask, why don't we start with 23 or 24? We've changed our budget process this year. In the past, the budget process has been more of a financial exercise, and it didn't really tie necessarily to any specific item, be it department, be it the academics. It just didn't tie. What we did this year is we went what's called a priority-based or zero-based budget. So each year, a department would start with zero and no guarantee that what they had in the past is what they would get this particular year based off of what their projected needs are, and then the administration and the board deciding what we can fund and what we can't fund. In doing that exercise, if you looked at just the non-personnel expenses past year, we were projected in 23 to spend about $35 million, and that's all funds. The request came in a little over $70 million. Obviously a disconnect. You can't fund $70 million. So you're trying, but you're getting the input of your stakeholders, and that changed. As we do that this coming year, we're adding to our account code, so we'll have the ability to generate on a very quick basis financials within a fund, multiple funds, that a department that crosses over multiple PRCs. That's something today we can do, but it's very time consuming. It's almost a manual process, which is kind of interesting when it's a $1 billion organization and we're doing things by hand. And a lot of things with pieces of paper, not doing it electronically. So we're trying to bring it up. As we do in that, we may not accomplish all of our goals as timely as we want to. But 22 is a pretty good indication of how we've spent local funds in the past, of what we're doing this year. And you can see 110 million out of, and this totals 162, and I'll explain that change in a second. 68% of it's on salary and benefits. If you look at the district, back out your charter schools, because that's just a pass-through of almost 10 million. Approximately 80% of every dollar is being spent on people. That's significant, because once you then back out the custodial charges, your maintenance charges, your transportation charges, which you need just to keep the buildings open and operating, it doesn't leave a whole lot of money for the district to do things with academic programs, maintenance issues, whatever the challenges may be. There's just not that money left over. So you look at the charter schools, it's a pass through, the utilities. This is where, in the past, some of the utility bills have been in Fund 8, which is other revenue. That's not where it belongs. It belongs in Fund 2. It's a local expense. Fund 2 is considered general expenses. And so for purposes of the presentation, we put that into this slide and are considering it part of Fund 2. And what we'll do is that as part of our end-year, year-end closing, we'll move over all the expenses and revenue associated with that from Fund 8 into Fund 2. Fund 8 should end up being just for grants primarily, and not both a combination of grants as well as local or our general operating expenses, because it becomes very difficult when you look at the end of the year in fund balance, how much of the fund balance is grant generated and how much of it is non-grant generated. And obviously, on the grant, the district cannot benefit from that fund balance. That grant's very specific, very restrictive, and we cannot utilize that funds or balance to help out a fund balance that Fund 8 may experience with it being generated from the operating side. The custodial costs, and you saw in our request, a $2 million increase. That increase is for service related. The belief was that we weren't delivering the service and cleaning our buildings with the prior relationship on the private contractor. We went out for an RFP. We've changed the contractor. Within their contract, there's specific language measuring the cleanliness of the building on a commercial basis, not on a agreed to basis. And that's resulted in more expense of about $2 million. I'm sorry. On the maintenance side, it's pretty standard. One thing interesting for y'all, as I've done this in many other districts, you always wonder what should be your maintenance dollars expense. And one of the best studies I found is from the Council of Great City Schools. It says, including your debt service, you should reinvest about 2% of your total replacement value as a goal to achieve a 50-year life. So you would have to, and we did not do the generation, but it kind of gives you an idea. Transportation is very straightforward, and you can see to the right on all of the slides, we've got information that kind of does a rough breakdown. In your book, you'll have more detailed breakdown behind these exact pie charts. Then within a subsection of the book in the appendix, you'll actually see an explanation of each of the purpose codes and the functions that tie to everything associated with the pie charts. And it'll give you a good breakdown. If you're wanting to add the total to check my math, then take your pie chart, take your explanation on the purpose code and function, add the blue number that's next to the highlighted line item, that'll equal 162 million. Beneath that blue number, you'll see multiple lines, and that's the function that gives you then a further breakdown of that purpose code. Other local, this right here is what the district can spend. And you can see the bulk of it, $10.3 million of the 19, is spent on professional and technical services, which is what I would expect it with the professional development and the other programs that we're doing. It could be software that's related to student services. It can be software related to instructional programs and the variety of services we offer. It could also be generated for like EC, where with that population coming back up, the operating cost per student is significantly higher than it is for a regular ed child. And the services are very specific to that individual student. So there is no, I deny it, you as a district have a moral and a fiscal responsibility to honor whatever the IEP process will generate. With that, you'll see that's where these dollars are being spent. The other one you see is school and office supplies, which is going to be your traditional, the instructional allotment that the district takes out of here and gives to the schools. And also then the dollars we need to help support those schools if they're missing general operating supplies from the district. In 23, you can see the funding sources. 24 will look very similar. The biggest change, the only real material change will be ESSER. ESSER 2 goes away on September of 2023. ESSER 4 will go away September of 2024. We're using June 30th of 2023 as our cutoff date, so it ties with our fiscal year, and then doing the same thing on ESSER 3 that it ties to our fiscal year. And we began that process this year, and we'll continue it. We separated it just because it is different, and that will be going away. So the purpose of that is we need to be thinking that that's not recurring funds. It's going away. There is an end to it, and we look at our recurring and what it takes to operate. We need to look at the other categories. On the positions by funding source, and we'll get into it when we get into the dollar amounts, but when an employee gets hired, generally they're going into the local fund. Then throughout the year, efforts are made to move people from local into either state or federal. On the state side, as long as I identify and move a position on or before June 29th, which retro back to or whenever the person started, but if they were there the whole year, it goes back to July 1st. So right now, if you had looked at this back in November of 2022, that number would have been 1,998. We go through with bodies and actually go person by person and continually update and change it. We also do a daily audit with the personnel where we may be exceeding what the state allows on a position to be funded. We may be underfunded. So we'll have it go both individual ways. A goal, I believe, that we make too many mistakes. Okay? That's Tommy's opinion. That is nobody else's. That's just mine. And it's something that we need to clean up because it makes us very inefficient. Because when we're sitting here managing the district's fiscal affairs, there may be dollars that we're leaving behind, okay, or could have done something sooner rather than later because we've got somebody in the local pot when they could have been in the state pot. And there's a significant difference in that funding. In the state side, they've used an average salary cost of $51,000 for the teachers and some change for us. So if I take a beginning teacher who's making, say, $42,000, they fund it at 42. But if I take an experienced teacher at step 40 who's making $60,000, they'll fund it at the 60. All they counting 2,300 positions. They don't care if you're at the low end or the high end, they'll give you that. So it behooves us to put all of our higher pay. Now, during the last presentation on Article 46, the question was raised about what is the average experience level on a weighted average basis of our staff. It came out to 19.9. There's 40 steps, so I'm right at about the midpoint. I honestly thought it was going to go differently, but when we did the calculation, it did not, and we've checked it numerous times. And so my point on that other slide is that number of 1,053 is going to continue to be lower. I am projecting that will be at least 75 more positions going into the state.
Say that again?
That number will change. The 1,053 that I've got sitting into the local pot will move into the state pot.
And you think that number's how many?
I'll do about another 75
It's going to move out of the green.
out of the local right into the blue.
Wow.
Everyone I can get, Dr. Martin, I'm going for.
Chairman, if I may ask a question, please, sir. With the URSA Fund 3, how many dollars of that do you have left, the remaining balance?
It's going to be in 181, it's called, and we've got about 181 is the PRC number.
Okay.
And there's about 65 to 68 million dollars.
Do you think that you're going to be through with that?
Oh,
by the
yes,
time?
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
fair
ma'am.
enough.
We started with 215 million. And actually, I received a call from the federal government a few days ago wanting to know what we've done because they were so impressed. Some districts are not spending it. And so we did. I mean, some of it's on people. Remember, 30 social workers were added to that. We have other positions that were added. But yes, we're spending it, and we think we'll spend, we know we'll spend the last 68 million.
Every dollar.
We're not giving anything back. We got to keep it all for our kids.
Awesome. Thank
So,
you. Thank you, Chairman.
So then, let's go to the last one. So our request, and I know Tommy's going to do the breakdown part of the pay increase, but I did want to say, if we look at the trend on this, the pay increase of the 5% is, if that is approved at the state level, right now, based on that 1,053, this would be what we would need to do the 5% increase on those on local dollars. Now, obviously, if that number's less, that could be less, and so Tommy will talk through that. But I did want to really call out, you heard about custodial, you heard the why behind that. The $660,000, that has been the request from both the sheriff's office and of $600,000 and Kernersville PD for $60,000. That's why that $660,000, that's where it comes from, and that's due to their increased cost of officers and all the other costs that they have to be able to keep up their contract with us and have school resource officers in our schools. So that is that request, the custodian request, the $4,437,456. That we've been working hard as well to free up as many dollars as we can within our local budget. And this year alone, I have not filled about 12 positions that came vacant at central office and have just merged those responsibilities with others. And with that, and this $4.437 million, we can have a $6.1 million to invest in our classified employees. Why is this important? Because as we look at market rate, and that is other districts, that is your rates of pay for your employees. I just met with our supervisors last week of all our trades. So this is HVAC, plumbing, electrician, everything, general maintenance. And when you look at our rates, and I'll just give one example, HVAC. When an air conditioning unit goes out, thank goodness we have people within our own district, because if we had to call out to a contract, we wouldn't be able to afford it. And so our guys can go do immediate repairs. Well, our base pay is $22.11. Here it's 20. The average to both our municipalities and our other surrounding districts is 24. So a $2 pay difference does make a difference. I know that doesn't sound drastic, but if you think about that hourly, and then by the end of the week and by the end of the year, and that doesn't include private sector. I mean, private sector we cannot match, nor are we trying to match, but we are losing our guys, and we're losing what our supervisors. This is a group of about 10 supervisors that oversee these incredible people. These are the people that come in when there's a snow day and things are, or when there's no power, and they're there at 4 in the morning, at midnight, trying to repair all this stuff to make sure our learning environments are ready for our kids. And they can leave and go to surrounding districts, or even come to the county and make more money, or to the city and make more money. And so we really feel like we want to invest in our employees. To get that one group to the right level, it would cost us about $1.6 million. That's to increase their compensation, but also to address the compression that continues to be an issue. That's just that group. Bus drivers is another group. Our TAs is another group. Our goal is to keep, it's not just about being competitive and retaining, that's huge, being competitive and retaining our employees. It's about also helping people make a livable wage. And yes, we went up to $15 minimum last year. It is not enough for some of our families that our employees, that husband and wife, that's their income, and they have children, and they have to have 3 and 4 jobs to make ends meet. So this is an investment in our people to retain them, but also just to give them enough, like raise their funds so that they can live more comfortably and not be worried paycheck to paycheck. And they still will be, even with a $2 pay increase, but it's at least an effort to try to address those disparities that we have in our classified employee groups. We thank you all so much for what we've done with Article 46 and how we've been able to get our teacher salaries up. That's still not where it needs to be. I'm hoping federally and state level that continues to be addressed. If that 5% comes through, that's a great step in another right direction. But there are classified employees. We really are committed to helping that group as well. We will continue as a district, Tommy, and together, and with Tommy's leadership, we are really putting in position controls. We are analyzing every position. There have been positions added that over time we are going to be addressing that have been, they're in schools. I mean, there are a lot of positions that have been added in the last few years to schools to support academic improvement. As you saw, the needs of our students changed, and even during the pandemic, when technology became a necessity, there were some positions added. So we are very serious about continuing to reduce that 156 or that 110 number. But right now, this is our request for today, and I'll let Tommy talk to you about the 5% increase, which would be if the state does that for state employees, then we would need to do the same for local. So I'll let you explain that.
I'm just going to go to the worksheet. So in the salary side, we do not have, what did I do?
A minute. Let me get rid of that. There we are.
Sorry
Oh,
about that.
do you want to go one more?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Oh, this is it. Okay.
So as of February 28th, and as I said, we do not have position control that I can rely upon. So we're having to build that position control component. The way salaries have been done in the past is here's the expense, take a general percentage, apply it, and here's a new budgeted expense. Well, that's not the best way to do it, because you don't really know if you haven't done the analysis of your actual expense and adjusted things for what your programs and your objectives are going forward. So we took the $57 million, we analyzed it on a very simple basis. We divided it out by 8 months. We then multiplied it. It was $85.9 million. If you look at our expense in Fund 2 during pre-pandemic, it was around $65 million. You look at the raises that have taken place at the 2.5%, 4%, and then now at 5%, we're in the same ballpark number. Now, is this number exactly right? I won't bet on it. It's my best solid estimate at this point. And until you do position control, you really don't have a number you can bet on. You have to do position control and do the computation based on the average salary cost. That process is underway, but the budget's derailed it from a timing. You got a commitment from me that we'll have it in place on or before the middle of the year. That I can take to the bank, if not a lot sooner. As I've asked the board, this budget's fluid because we do not know what the state's going to give us. And obviously, when the state comes in, we could be high, we could be low, but there'll have to be a true up that has to take place, and we'll need to come back to y'all as a governing body with that information. Because I don't have 100% confidence, this is the best guess, and that people have worked extremely hard to put this together, and I think it's a fair representation. However, it's not as tight as it needs to be. Okay? Now, y'all can tell me to go retire and I'll go home. Or we can focus and get this done correctly for not just today, but in the future. And then, with the true up, make the appropriate adjustments. But you know what I'm saying? And our board, the other night at our meeting, while we didn't ask for a formal vote, they were very supportive of that idea, as they shake their heads at me. The superintendent's very supportive of that. And so, as you're looking at this, don't think of it as final, because it's not even close. Okay? That's all I ask.
If I may, Chairman, real quick again,
Sure.
while you're here under compensation, what I do know is that you can't get satisfaction out of dollars, right? So I'm hopeful that you have some type of satisfaction survey that will give you an insight, kind of like a kaleidoscope of
Yes.
the how people are feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Anything you can
I will
provide.
say, Commissioner McDaniel, thank you for saying that, because I will say I was interviewed yesterday by a media outlet, and they talked about pay. And we can do so much with pay, but the culture of our school district is a huge factor in what will keep people here or drive over a line for $2 more, or $1 more, or $3 more. And so that is a huge, huge priority. If you look at our talent, employee engagement, and employee retention is a priority for us. In the next week, we have a veteran teacher appreciation event that 450 of our most experienced teachers are coming to, because we don't want to lose that experience either. Yes, it's great to bring in our new blood, and we've got a lot of new teachers. This year we had a lot, and it's awesome. But those veteran teachers have years of experience, can mentor those newer teachers, and you don't want to just keep turning them over. Our HVAC workers and others said the same thing. Please don't let our experienced people leave, because to train up the new group, it's great for the future, but for right now, it's taxing. So yes, the culture of our district is huge, and we are focused on that in many ways. We did through ESSER do a lot of retention bonuses, but again, that's not it. It's about ongoing value, ongoing support around employee wellness. And so we've got, yes, that is a major focus as well. We know it's not just about money.
So let's look at the salaries, and just to kind of give you some things to think about. What's not in there is the supplement, where if my projections were right, we're going to be about 1.9 million. That, I think everybody would agree, we need to maintain what the supplements are getting paid at least equal to what they've received this year, because it's generally late in the year. If we're going to change it and bring them down, my recommendation would be to notify the staff sooner of that fact. And I know that that's been told to them in the past, but people forget about things like that. So the plan is, if there is any cushion that's sitting in the number, though, you would want to do something from a funding standpoint to make sure that Article 46 doesn't go backwards. It stays flat. The vacant positions, that kind of becomes a catch-all that you can use for the Article 46. You also do have vacant positions. This right here represents 22 positions. Our average teacher salary is $51,000. On any given day, our vacancies run about 100, which is almost a 50-50 teachers and then 50% classified. And obviously, the classified salaries are not at the $51,000 mark. But you can see that cushion that's sitting there isn't a whole lot in comparison to what we face each and every day. Based on the $5.4 million on the retirement, we applied 25.25. Currently, the retirement rate is 24.5%. In talking with the other large school systems in the state, everybody believes that what was proposed in the governor of 0.12 is going to be higher. We had projected 0.75, so we've used that for purposes of looking at our budget.
You're talking about the retirement match number.
Sir?
You're talking about the
Correct.
retirement
We went
match
up to
number increasing, and
24.5.
And you heard whatever I know the rumor grapevine of 1.2, and you're.
We went up to 25
Yeah, 25.7 would be
25.
the one.
We went to 25.2. We went from 24.5 up 0.75 to 25.25.
Okay.
And so the raise of 5.4 is what picks up the 1.3 on the retirement. The 736 is the other existing base salary that we also have to cover with the increase, just on the increase, which is on the 0.75, not the full 25.25, because we already do the 24.5. So we're just picking up the 0.75 portion. On the FICA, that's just on the additional increase in salaries because the existing salaries already has the FICA component in it. The workers' comp is 0.67%, so it's very tiny, but again, it's based off of your actual dollars. And then on the healthcare, we had initially was at $300. There's one prediction right now to be $222. The larger systems are thinking it may be even higher than that. So we went back and did a 5% increase is what we were initially projecting. So it's $370. All of that, what I say that for is the budget is going to change once the state adopts. Hopefully, the state adopts percentages lower than what we're predicting, and then it makes our request significantly less than what's on the table today. And that's it.
Questions?
I'll start with
Go back.
just a few questions. We had about an hour ago, just got a couple of highlights, and you've helped me somewhat listen to your complete presentation, understand it a little bit better. But I do want to kind of just get into a couple things. Part of it's just understanding, and I've actually been trying to think, just because some of these sessions in the past have been long, and I probably going to try to see if it not be, maybe I'm sure my colleagues would like for me to not make it as long here, and there may be another way to do that. There may be a way to, there's some digestion that needs to take place, and maybe have a follow-up from a couple of us that are really interested, and maybe whether there's one or two board members or whatever, and our respective finance folks, and maybe spend a little more time, kind of more, it's really more understanding your request and also understanding the assumptions that you have made, which you have begun to share, because some quick arithmetic on the sheet without this worksheet gave some numbers that made, to be perfectly frank, not much sense. But I do want to start with I got a couple big pictures, and then maybe my colleagues can think about this idea of maybe having a further validation committee, if you will, or seeking better understanding kind of committee that we could actually do something later. But I do want to ask a little question about just this. First of all, overall assumption of the state. I understand where you came with the 5%, but the 5% at the state level applies to, that's the teacher salary raise, and the classified employees, which is and you have lumped all that together.
Correct.
And I can and this is a true statement from the past, is that classified employees, typically what we did, because there's no requirement to match the state level.
Sure, that's right.
And in fact, what at least in the past was used, whatever the state employee salary increase was what we matched our locally paid classified employees. And usually that's a little less. And this year it will be less. I'm confident of that.
Right.
So jumping to the 5% and making, and I understand whether it's ease of doing or certainly you want to pay classified employees more, and I heard some of that discussion, but in terms of an anchor, because the teacher pay has been way out of whack, and the classified group, while it may be underfunded, it's been kind of, basically the local level. I mean, quite frankly, local school districts make the decision, am I going to contract out for maintenance, or am I going to hire HVAC workers? Am I going to do this? I mean, there are a million decisions that local districts make. We have wonderful comparisons by districts on state teachers and local teachers, but no comparison on the number of classified employees. And I remember our maintenance folks priding themselves in the past, when I was superintendent, that we actually had grown by about 1 million plus square feet, and basically, we were taking care of all, from the maintenance standpoint, and realized some of that was new construction. Our maintenance staff was not growing. And actually, in fact, the state used to publish a square footage, kind of some other numbers that they were able to kind of come up with and on more analysis on the business side. And that was very helpful because it kind of showed the number of people per square foot and looks at a couple things, and there were some better numbers. State never continued. They did that like 2 years, and that was it. But that was very helpful because we got a good feeling where we were. And it was good. We were pleased with that. But essentially, that assumption to always match the teacher raise may not be at least from my perspective, may not be the assumption to apply. Now, that's a school board decision and you all's decision. However, back in the philosophy side of this, the decisions with what discretionary money you have rest with you. And the part I don't want, and it is becoming, is that some of this discretionary part that's the worst is you're looking to make it rest with us. And I probably don't think we need to be the one resting with it. And that's why the work on the formula of many years ago, while, school districts folks maybe didn't like how the amount and the formula worked, it was fair in that it based the same percentage of new revenue. School district was guaranteed to get it. And that, by the way, that number is pretty healthy this year, but it's nowhere near what your request is, because we just have checked that. I mean, that's a good benchmark. Because when that was happening, we weren't, here is the amount of money that's your fair share, and you apply your decisions about priorities and discretion to them. And do I want to have more people out in schools helping overcome these kind of issues, or do I want to pay my maintenance staff more? You have to balance those because there's never enough money to do all that you want to do. So you have to balance those things. And I don't sense as much balance here because I don't hear anything you're really cutting. I hear 75 positions moving out of local into the state, which is music to my ears because that means you've been underutilizing the state dollars that were available in a way that would maximize the benefit to the district, which is the past sins cannot be fixed here, except I know, I've talked with Tommy Krantz, that you can't operate a school district without position control. You just cannot do that. And to have gone through a window of time without it has created chaos. Just personally.
Can I respond, Dr.
Yes.
Martin? Okay, so.
I'm not quite finished,
Oh,
but you can
oh,
respond.
finish. No, I'll wait till you're done.
No, I'd like, because if this is on your mind, jump
Okay,
in there.
Thank you. So two things. First of all, so we are in the process of eliminating positions. We eliminated 12 this year to be able to uncover 1.2 million that will go to our classified employees. That was just in 1 year of not filling through attrition. One thing I don't feel comfortable doing is just removing people. And so as we think about supports to schools, some of the type of positions that were added about 3 years ago are roles like instructional technology facilitators. Those fall in the local budget. There's a lot of them. We are having plans and working with our people to start to make adjustments, or to move certain people into other positions, classroom positions and things like that. So we are very much serious about doing exactly that. And that's why this year there are 12 specific positions that I can tell you out of different divisions that we have said we're going to take that on by this person, merge those positions, and this is just the start to free up the dollars. So we agree with you that with that total amount, we've got to work within that amount. The part about the classified employees, so if I could have reduced 5 million right now with our positions, I would have, to just take that on myself, take it on ourselves, just take on that 4 point whatever million. Not able to do that yet. I'm not saying over time we will not be able to as we analyze every other position, impact of it. We have evaluations going right now about many of our positions across the system to figure out impact. That's very important to us. What I will say about the statement around, I wish that I could have videotaped my meeting with our maintenance people, because many of them have been here for 20 years and 15 years. And what they said is that they basically are not proud of the fact that they have done more. And what they're saying is, we can't do it. We are running a rat race, exact words, and that we can go get a schedule in private industry and make way more and get a schedule of, here's your schedule for the day, these 3 things, and not be running all over so many miles of a system. I mean, they're not saying, we're proud because we've done more with less all these years. That is not their message. Their message is loud and clear to me, Dr. Martin, around they are overworked, underpaid, and we need to do something about it. And so it's the same group that was here then. Times are different is all I can say, because it is the same group. I have to show them that I'm listening to them and that I value them, because if not, they're not going to stay. And so I love the fact that there was a day when people just said that. That is not the day today. I mean, I said the same thing as a teacher, as everything. It is just not the same day today. We have got to respect people's time. We have got to respect their contributions. And I'm just so sorry.
No,
That's-
but I
just wanted to-
understand,
yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But as that becomes a priority for you all as a board, then you maybe take a look at some of your other discretionary dollars and say, hey.
Yes.
I mean, everything is not people. There's
Right.
another 15% of $1 billion, which is 150 million, that's out there, that there's some other things that can be looked at too. And it's just that I feel like the way this is presented right now, this is basically a salary budget, is what's presented to us for increase. And for us, so if we don't fund that, that basically becomes one that, well, we stood up for you guys, but those mean old county commissioners, man, they didn't pick up the slack. So I just want to, we'll try to put that where all of this goes. And I'm not saying, let me tell you, you don't think we take our share of criticism? But the other thing is that the criticism we need to be taken? Because I think there's a whole lot of other things in terms of the issue of running the enterprise that's important. And so this you open the door. I mean, but just for example, in this last page of the worksheet, Tommy has qualified it in that we don't know, but we're looking at, $1,139,000 in increased dollars for salaries of positions that are vacant that we do not know that will be filled. For example, which is, by the way, 1/16 of your request. So I have a little trouble with some of that, to go, because maybe that becomes where because I agree completely with you that reduction in staff is done through attrition. There is no doubt about it. And there's lots of attrition that you're going to work on. And then that's when you begin to look at how do we restructure and do that. I just understand all that. Well, here's $1,139,000 of vacant positions, which provides an opportunity to say, well, let's take a look at those. That's just a piece of that. And I'm also I'm looking at this very same page, the part on the retirement system piece. Understand completely. You're making your best guess. You're going to have to pay it for everybody. There's that 0.75 differential. I have not gotten my calculator out yet. But if I did, I don't think that 0.75 of your total amount is going to equal the amount of the 736,000. It just seems too big. Now, maybe I'm right. Maybe I don't have the right number yet to pick that up. And it could be that it could be that amount. But that's a pretty big number. I see I got, obviously the 1.3 is clear, where that's, well, no, actually the 1.3 is coming out of vacant positions and your 5% raise piece. So that very first one has got built into it, 20% of that is built into vacant positions in retirement match. And then you got the current positions that you're making that other guesstimate to. So I have a little heartburn. So that's why I'm not so sure we probably need to, and I'm sure all my colleagues are sitting here and saying, way too far in the weeds now, way too far. And that perhaps maybe my original suggestion is worth thinking about. I have only one other thing I got to ask about custodial work.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to interrupt. I'm just asking a question simply because I'm absolutely in the dark as to exactly what we're trying to do. I can't understand a simple definition of the terms that we're using. And it's all well and good, but we're talking about millions and millions of dollars, and we've got two people who understand it better than I, and I consider Don Martin, with his college degrees and his knowledge of what's going on in the school system, in my mind, he is the guru to go to even as the earth comes to an end, because he alone probably knows where the decimals are hidden and the dollar marks are hidden and that type of thing. And Tommy, I'm impressed with the work you do. You bring it to me anyway in a manner that I can simply understand. How much is it? Where is it coming from? What are the terms? What do we mean by some of these terms that we're using? Very simple terms. And when I try to put it together in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I've got two daughters who are school teachers. And if I went home and told them what I'm hearing today, they would say, well, what do you mean, Pop Pop? They call me Pop Pop. I said, I haven't the slightest idea, but I want you to know what I'm hearing. And that's really where I'm coming from. There's a definition for one word that can be defined simply, I'm sure, by everybody in this room but me. The only thing I understand is if you have $1, it costs 50 cents, you got 50 cents left. Now, you can take a lot of different words and describe that dollar and the percentages that you reduce that in, and what have you got left, and how are you going to pay it? What's the future hold? And I know it's a complex, very difficult situation. But what I'm interested in is, what do the teachers actually make? What can they look forward to? You know, in business, you know, the business I come from, if you go out and you sell X number of percentages, you get 15% of the gross amount. Define gross. Define the amount. It's all depending on words and how we get there. And frankly speaking, if you asked me to vote, I wouldn't know what I'm voting on, because I don't really understand the simple, elementary meaning of what you're saying to people who don't deal in that all the time. I mean, what I do in my life is I deal in radio, I deal in television. I'm very interested in history, English, but when it comes to figures, I need someone who can take me by the hand and lead me down the road. And I'm still in that dark room saying, well, when are we going to leave? So I don't mean to say that you haven't made an impression, but you have made an impression. And from my perspective, I just want to know what we're going to spend, how we're going to spend it, how long it's going to take, where the money's coming from. Is it coming from the state, or what percentages are we going to have to live with? It's something I just haven't got together in my mind. I didn't mean to go on and ramble like this, but everybody on this board, I probably understand way more than I do, and I admit that. But when I'm, at home and I'm setting my home budget, I know exactly where the money's going. And I look into it and I think about it, and I've done it all my life, but I can't get a handle on this one. And I apologize for going so long, but I just had to say that because maybe you can help.
Mr. Chairman, I think your suggestion to form a committee, for lack of another term, seeking better understanding, I think that's what we need. We only saw this about an hour ago. So we all have many questions, but we need to break it down to a committee and come back again.
I think that's fair. Thank you.
Is there some consensus on this group that that's a good idea?
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea for clarifying the baseline numbers. And I think that can be done better with a smaller number of folks in a room going over the technical questions of what should this number actually represent based on current reality, et cetera. That's as distinct from the policy questions that are legitimately for public debate by discussion by the entire board. For example, the competitive classified employee salary adjustments are more of the latter. And to that end, I would be very interested in seeing additional breakdown in that number of the classifications that you're referencing, the numbers of staff in each, what you are recommending or requesting, I should say.
Define classified.
Well,
People who are not
simple.
teaching, basically.
We can do that, Mr. Bessie. We can, Commissioner Bessie, we can explain all those groups. And again, some are, not all are paid on local dollar. So we'll show you, like, this is going to address all, this is all, because we're not, at this point, so we'll tell you who makes up that group and what this could do for each of those as far as, we've been doing a lot of analysis on market rate, and market rate, again, is other school districts, local government, and private. With private, really, we understand we might not make the private mark on some of these roles.
and in addition, clearly you are understaffed in some of these areas, and it is not a matter that can be satisfactorily resolved in operational terms by not filling positions or by attrition in positions. If you need so many bus drivers to get the students to and from school on time, you need so many bus
Yeah,
drivers.
we can't just eliminate bus drivers.
And if you are not able to recruit and retain to that number, then one of the things that needs to be considered in responding to that gap is salary adjustment. So that that is why I'm suggesting that a breakdown in the number of positions, the particular position classifications that we're talking about, and the dollars that would be required to address each, is the kind of information that would be helpful in our policy, discussions of, well, what do we really need to responsibly fund, even if it's more than we really wanted to spend. So anyway, thank you for that information.
Thank you. We will be happy to give that. I will say one more thing about classified employees, and one of their biggest concerns, and every single time I have an event and they're at it, or anytime I see them on the streets, or anytime I see them at the bus slots or anything, they always talk about the fact that for too many years in our district, we did not address compression. And so we did not address that person coming in and what they make compared to a person that has committed 20 years as being a bus driver. And I think that should have been addressed all along, and I might not be standing here asking you for money, but I will say that it has not been, and so we have to do that at some point.
And I have seen similar questions come up when I was with the city for police and fire, for example.
And if I can just interject, this is not something specific to Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. I was just having this very conversation heart to heart with a custodial worker at a school over in Guilford County, the concern about compression. So I don't want us to think that, we're odd out of the box around some of the stuff that we're talking about. And as you could see, even in Guilford County, the request is very similar around trying to present to the county commissioners as relates to this issue with salary. So I think we can rest assured that we just have to, work cooperatively, authentically to figure it out. And while I have the mic, and I'm sorry I didn't ask for the chair's permission, but I just wanted to address that while I was thinking about it. I do agree that with Vice Chair Wisenhunt, if we could really, sit down together to figure out accounting versus policy. I think the accounting issue is something that we can reconcile, especially we have one of the best minds in school budget sitting on our commission, so with Dr. Martin. So I think the accounting piece, we'll figure that out. I think the policy issue is just going to be about philosophically, where we all stand as commissioners as it relates to, especially the request, that carryover from the issue I'm looking at is this carryover from fiscal year 23 with the classified employee salary adjustment to attract and retain. And I say that because I had to adjust to the culture and climate of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, that you don't differentiate between classified and teachers, that we're all educators. So I appreciate you standing up as the superintendent with the courage to say, well, I represent this culture of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and I would just appreciate ideally the county commissioners, helping us to the best of your ability to sustain the culture so that we can retain and attract, the best talent that we possibly can. But at the end of the day, I look forward to a smaller committee to help the school district figure this out.
Any other comments? And I have a request to take a break anyway, so any other comments before we take a break? All right, let's try about an 8-minute recess.
takes me a while.
Before anyone
Thanks for coming
says it,
up.
I really can tell time.
Move adjourn.
No, we have a few more things. Commissioner Plyler, a few more things. We do need, our last discussion item is Lee Plunkett's going to cover the final pieces on the bond ratings issues. And I think he provided a handout to us of the ratings. Thank you.
Yes, I placed a manila folder with the printouts of all the ratings that we received recently. So during the last week of April, Terry, our CFO, Adam Fernbach, our treasury analyst, and I met with all three rating agencies along with our financial advisor, First Tryon, so S&P, Moody's, and Fitch. In these meetings, we discussed the upcoming sale, just general economic conditions of the county, and then specifically our county's financial management and health. So obviously, the goal is to receive the highest possible rating so that we can earn the lowest possible interest rate on the bonds. And so we are happy to report that all three rating agencies affirmed a AAA rating, which is the highest an entity can receive. Some highlights and the reasons why, according to our analysts, so the fiscal policies adopted by you, the board, are sound and provide an excellent foundation, and the wording they use are a very strong institutional framework. The conservative budgeting practices of our budget department and the county manager's office help maintain our healthy fund balances and provide spending flexibility. They look at it as almost like a stress test for economic downturns. The capital improvement plans, coupled with the debt leveling plans approved by you, the board, show an overall moderate debt portfolio for our size, which signals very good capital planning and then a very low overall long-term liability on the county, burden on the county. And finally, the diverse and growing tax base is a strong source for their ratings, and particularly the growth of our property tax and sales tax. All this means a AAA rating makes our bonds highly attractive to investors, and those investors are seeking low-risk quality investments in turn, allowing us to sell at the lowest possible market rates. So our official statements go out to investors tomorrow with the sale set for May 23rd. And so we will update you with the results soon after that. Happy to answer any questions.
That's good news.
I do.
Very good news.
First of all, thank you, Dudley. You always present us with a budget that's conservative, and very seldom do we have to change anything. So thank you. But let me ask you, was there, the deadline's May 23rd, so have we ever received the letter from the school board endorsing our plan?
We have not.
So are we going to continue with the funding or pull the funding?
It's entirely up to the board. Lee, you want to talk a little bit about how that would be handled if the board's direction was to not extend it beyond the...
So I have to check with our bond counsel, but I know we do not have to sell up to the amount that we have advertised to sell. So we could come up with the amount that you truly wanted to sell, but we would need to know, I think, fairly quickly.
Well, I think they've had ample time to send the letter, and I don't think that's too much to ask of them to be partners with us. And I really was looking forward to the letter before I agreed with the funding. So I'm just one vote, though.
So basically, the bonds, it's selling an authorization, basically. I mean, that's what's purchasing. Is the actual, so how does that, just explain this part to me, how does that extend to how much you choose to sell? I mean, what is the low that you could choose to sell in that, after the sale, so to speak?
Again, I need to check with bond counsel, but I don't know that there's a minimum set. So, I mean, I think we can...
So you could postpone purchasing for whatever time you needed to. I mean, or the actual execution.
I don't know what the consequences of that would be, but that is my understanding.
You would lose some, this is key because you lose some authorization. We are maxing out our
That's right,
exactly.
Exactly. That's a different question. Yes.
Yeah, and so if you don't sell it, we will lose those, certainly on the 2/3, because you...
That authorization, yes, would be at the end of the year.
We wouldn't be back in the
referendum, it would be till November, but then you're looking at the next budget year, and so there's some issues with, that would go along with that.
I actually thought the school board had action on Tuesday to approve their projects, the projects kind of list.
So
for
we
the-
received the project list and we
You
passed.
did get some,
We
a
got the
new
project
project
list
list.
for both the referendum bonds and the 2/3 capital maintenance bonds.
Would love to see that, by the way.
Yep, I can forward those
We can
on.
get copies before we get out of the meeting.
Yeah,
We'll
that would
make sure
be,
you
that
all-
would be good. That would be good. Yeah, and I think getting a letter is certainly should not be a big, we should be able to get that. I mean, I don't understand where that letter is.
So full disclosure, my comment, my conversation with the superintendent was that, I think some board members were hopeful that that letter would say that they would agree to defer, using some language, a request for a bond referendum. I guess the only other time we could do it would be in '26. You're either going to have a bond, something on the ballot in '26 or '28. And I think there were hopes that it would say, we understand a financial planning mechanism and all that we would not pursue that until FY '28. I don't think that a majority of school board members were in support of that.
Well, if they can't write a letter that at least explains and qualifies, they probably would understand not getting the money, I suspect. That's a big sacrifice.
Yeah, I will.
I mean, there's a way, I mean, I'm not looking for, I don't think that, I mean, if I would put on the school district hat, I wouldn't send a letter and confirm I would not request anything at all until 2028 at all. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen between now and 2026, for example, but I would think I could certainly write a letter that was very supportive that doesn't say, I'm not signing this and I didn't cut my finger and sign it in blood here. And make it clear what the qualifications were, short of unforeseen or other circumstances beyond control or whatever the kind of things you get into.
So I think the steps would be to find out what if the board next Thursday were to make a decision, what's the flexibility with the bond council in terms of the day of sale and all those kinds of things. So there's that issue, and then I'll certainly follow back up with the superintendent about, and I think getting the project list is something I was not aware they had gotten those, so.
It was Wednesday.
Yep, and so we'll get those to you, and then I'll let the superintendent know, expect to go ahead and send some communication.
It's good.
Thanks, Lee.
All righty, thank you. Thank you, Lee, for your very thorough, as usual. Thank you. We're ready for the county manager to go over our items for next week, May 18th.
That's absolutely. All right, we've got two items from Planning and Development Services. So Chris Murphy's going to stand up and do a quick review, since you've already seen it once, of F-1630 and F-1631.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a recap of what we discussed last week. This is F-1630 is a request to rezone from GI to RS40. It's a 3.89 acre piece of property on Hammock Farm Road, south of Old Walkertown Road. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan. It's located within the GMA4 future growth area, there to the northwest of Walkertown. Here is the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, you see it's on both sides of Hammock Farm Road, southeast of Old Walkertown Road, and it is adjacent to existing RS40 zoned property. This is the subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. Again, you see the subject property does split both sides of Hammock Farm Road. This is the subject property identified on the Walkertown Area Plan Update, which the Commissioners adopted back in 2012. It recommends single-family residential land use on the subject property. This is an image looking southeast portion of the subject property. This is looking at the northwest portion of the subject property, again on the other side of Hammock Farm Road. And this is looking eastbound. The subject property is on both sides of the road there, the house, and then the property there across from the zoning sign. In summary, the proposed RS40 district would replace the industrial zoning that is out of character with the surrounding area. The Walkertown Area Plan update does recommend single-family residential land use at this location, and the proposed request is consistent with legacy. This was heard at the April 13th, 2023 public hearing before the Planning Board. There were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the request. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris?
So with that, I will move to the second presentation. And this is a request, F-1631. It's a request of Charles Grubb to rezone 24.24 acres of property on the west side of Follinsby Road, south of Bridgeton Road. This is a general use rezoning request from RS9 to RS20. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It's located within GMA 3 Suburban Neighborhoods Growth Management Area, and it's located on the just to the west of Highway 52 along Fishel Road and Follinsby Road. This is the subject property shown in yellow. Again, you'll notice it is located on the west side of Follinsby Road, just south of Bridgeton Road. Highway 52 would be off to the east or to the right side of this image, and Fishel Road is off the map on this image down to the south. Subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. It has an existing single-family home along with some agricultural buildings and pasture and woodlands. Subject property shown on the South Suburban Area Plan update, which was also adopted by the commissioners back in 2012. It recommends single-family residential 0 to 8 units per acre, low-density residential in this area. So thus, the request to go from RS9 to RS20 is consistent with the area plan. This is looking north on Follinsby Road. The site is on the left. That's the bridge on Follinsby, and Bridgeton would be just in the background of this image. And again, this is looking north. This is looking south along Follinsby Road. The site is on the right. This is looking into the northern portion of the site. This is the single-family home that's on the site currently. This is looking into the southern portion of the site at the existing agricultural buildings, barns and whatnot. And this is looking across Follinsby Road from the subject property. This property is not part of the request. In summary, the request is consistent with legacy in that it supports a mixture of housing densities and types. The South Suburban Area Plan update does recommend single-family residential land use at this location. The site does have access to public water and sewer. 2023 public hearing. Again, there were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this request to the commissioners. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris?
One quick one. That northwestern boundary of the site on this map, is that just the line of the city limits, or is there something else that line runs along?
The property line and the city limit line is the same line.
Basically, the property line is just tracing the city limit.
Yes, the property line is the city limit line in this area. So properties to the west and northwest are all within the city, but this is within unincorporated Forsyth County.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And again, I hate to run, but I have a planning board meeting I need to get to. I need to prepare for it, so I'm going to head out after this.
Thank you, Chris. Agenda item 3 is a resolution recognizing May 21st through 27th, 2023 as National EMS Week in Forsyth County. So we'll have some folks from EMS here next week to accept that recognition and note our appreciation of their service. You've got minutes, which will be coming to you pretty soon, I bet.
I hope to get them out tomorrow.
Very good. So be looking for those. We have a couple of budget and finance items. Item 5 is a resolution approving a revision to the fiscal year 2022-2023 Juvenile Crime Prevention Council funding plan. We've got an associated budget ordinance amendment, and Michaela Westbrook from Budget Management, who used to be with us in Public Health, will come up and review this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So I'm presenting you all with a resolution to revise the current fiscal year funding plan for the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. On April 28th, 2023, Family Services was awarded $4,802 in discretionary funds from the state to be used for new office furniture. And there's also a budget ordinance amendment to amend the budget. If you have any questions, I'll take them.
No questions. It's good to meet you. I heard your name today.
Nice to meet you all as well.
Nice to meet you.
She has jumped into the budget world pretty quickly, so it's all good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Michaela. Agenda item 6 is an amendment to the 2020 PAYGO Capital Projects Ordinance to transfer funds from Economic Development Reserves to the S.G. Atkins Community Development Corporation. And you're going to hear about that from Kyle Haney. You're going to also have a budget ordinance amendment for some projects that he talked to you about a couple of weeks ago.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the County Manager said, this item is really kind of a follow-up item from the April 27th morning session where we talked about some economic development projects. I'm going to go through the list of projects here. There are a couple additional ones that were added on, and I'll talk through those as well. Just as a reminder, the board had set aside $7.5 million in PAYGO funds between the 2020 and 2022 PAYGO for economic development purposes. This is appropriating all $1 million from the 2020 and $4,550,000 from the 2022 for projects. The first project here is $300,000 towards the expansion of shared use kitchen by S.G. Atkins at the Enterprise Center. The board actually approved this funding back in 2021. S.G. Atkins applied for the grant, received notification back in September of 2022 that they were awarded that grant. And so this is the budgetary item to uphold that resolution that we passed.
Any questions for Kyle?
The second project that is funded from the PAYGO funds is for improvements at the 3820 North Liberty Street, the county-owned hangar across the street from Smith Reynolds Airport Terminal. And this is updates to make it the property marketable for economic development purposes, including improvements to the aircraft ramp, auto parking, updating bathrooms to be ADA compliant, and asbestos removal. The next project is $2 million to do improvements for the 4400 Lansing Drive at Smith Reynolds Airport. This was the project where Piedmont Propulsion is leasing that property currently. This would put in flooring in that project and allow them to expand operations and increase their employment. They would also pay additional rent for those improvements for the lease space. The next portion is $1.4 million to do environmental testing and engineering for site preparation at that designated Site 5 on the airport property. And so, like many of these, we would be bringing items back to you once we go through the selection process. I believe I heard from the board, really, we want to know that environmental piece of it and then come back and talk about options for what to do on Site 5 after that. But this would allocate the money towards that. The next item here is $200,000, and this is for, it says demolition, but really it's improvements along, for economic development purposes, a couple sites in the southern part of, or south of the runways at Smith Reynolds Airport. I just wanted to clarify, this is not the cooperative extension building. This is where the sheriff is impounding vehicles right now, and then there's another piece of property behind that where I believe we're hosting livestock right now. Certainly, we're going to be working with the sheriffs to make sure that he has a different location for looking at those vehicles before anything is done with that. But it really is an area that could be economic development site.
So the improvement is just to knock the building down, right?
Potentially, yes, sir. Yes, sir. The next item here is $110,000 to go to Forsyth Tech for the Learn and Earn Apprenticeship Program. You heard about that as well in April. This would allow that program to continue to be tuition-free while we wait to hear from the state about a state appropriation that would fund and expand that program. The next item is $190,000 to serve as urgent repair funds that would assist low and moderate income homeowners, really as a leverage tool for that Duke Energy program, so that we would work in partnership with them. And then the two items that were not discussed in full back in April,
$250,000, and this is kind of a placeholder that was set aside, really coming from the work that we did out of the winter work session, talking about identifying future employment centers. And so we've been meeting as staff, planning, utilities, Gary Winsell Mink, to try to go through this. As we discussed back in February, there's just a lot of complications about having those public conversations and timeline about identifying those properties. We've done some initial work, but really could benefit from a consultant helping us identifying not only what parcels have potential, but a strategy towards how that could play out, what partners need to be brought to the table. We spoke with the state who's done this on a statewide level, and they spent about $350,000. Obviously, there would be a whole procurement process, but this just sets aside some funds to be able to go out and potentially identify a consultant to do that work. And then the final piece of this is $300,000 set aside for, it says acquisition of property along Liberty Street, approximate to Smith Reynolds. This is property that we already have, the county already has under contract across the street from Smith Reynolds Airport, 3290 and 3230 North Liberty Street. I know there's some uncertainty around environmental, and so this provides some funding in case there's some remediation work that needs to be done to shore up the budget for that project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle. All right. Since we just talked about the airport a little bit, we'll get Mark Davison up here to talk about a resolution authorizing the execution of a grant agreement between Forsyth County and the North Carolina Department of Transportation to fund airfield lighting rehabilitation work.
Yeah, and this might look like a replay from 2 weeks ago. The airfield lighting at Smith Reynolds Airport is in need of rehabilitation, and North Carolina Department of Transportation Division of Aviation has allocated additional federal funds for the project. In order to utilize any outstanding 2019 non-primary entitlement fund balance, the NCDOT has awarded Forsyth County a grant in the amount of $10,181, not to exceed 90% of the federal share of the final eligible project cost of $11,313. Staff recommends execution of the grant, which uses non-primary entitlement before they expired at the end of this month.
All right.
Any questions? I'll be back in a little bit.
Yeah, well, why don't you stay there? We can, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I said I think it's in everybody's interest if the planes land on the runway.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, lights on the runway.
You can
good.
see the runway.
So he does have two items under contract. Why don't you go ahead and take them, and we'll knock those out. Item 10 is a resolution selecting and authorizing the execution of a contract with LS3P Associates for some design services. You talk about item 11 is also yours, and it's the design builder for the car wash to support your rental car agencies and other things. Did I mess you up?
No.
Okay.
Which one is it? First one? Okay. Thank you so much. All righty. I got, like you just said, I have two items. The first one, hangar door improvements at 3820 North Liberty Street. This is the hangar across the street. Give you a little insight. Back in 1958, Piedmont Airlines built their headquarters there with the city bond, and then it was operated for years, and then Landmark Aviation operated a maintenance facility when I first arrived in Forsyth County, and then in 2013, they actually bought the improvements from RJR Reynolds, their corporate hangar, and moved their maintenance operation, aircraft maintenance, across the street, closer to the runways. So we acquired that building for $1 back in 2013, and as you expect, there's a lot of maintenance with this building, but we've been able to lease out a large portion of it. We have existing tenants like Lookup Aviation that sells the Sling aircraft I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, as well as offering flight training. We've got Aero 8, which is like a wholesaler for aircraft parts, and we also have a snack bar. But the doors on that facility date back to 1958, and there's been no upgrades since that time. Parts are obsolete. What it is there's 9 doors, and there are all these solid slab doors that sort of go up like a cantilever and then recess into the building. There's no emergency release when the doors are not operating properly, so sometimes we have aircraft trapped inside. You actually have to go up, manually turn a shaft on the electric motor and the rafters, and it's not very safe. So we went out and issued a request for qualifications for a design build firm. The selection committee agreed that LS3P Associates to provide the professional design services. We're looking at a project budget about $800,000, and James Anderson was able to negotiate a fee of $62,875. That includes a basic service fee as well as some reimbursable expenses as well as additional service allowances. So we'd like to move forward with this project, and it includes demolition as well as replacement of the existing door system, including electrical infrastructure. And what I envision happening here is you won't have these type of doors anymore. You'll have the traditional sliding doors that they'll come up with a design for. And so we'd like to move forward with that.
I'm just a little surprised they're 700,000.
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just a little surprised there's an estimate of 700,000. I realize it's a whole wall surface.
Yeah.
And they're big, but I think what I envisioned being replaced with are probably not like what you have now. That's very complicated and kind of messy, but anyway, I got you. It is what it is.
Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. The next one is rental car and county vehicle fleet wash station. When you first drive up to Smith Reynolds Airport, it's an unsightly car wash, a hose bib, and a little building there. And we're doing this huge terminal renovation project, so we need to move the car wash. It's essential for rental cars at the airport. Avis Budget as well as Hertz used to use it, but they're coming back. But what we want to do is look at constructing a new vehicle wash station that can accommodate not only the rental cars, which is a necessity, but also maybe consider the county fleet vehicles. We also need some backup because it's so essential for the rental cars to be able to wash their vehicles. So we were looking around, and we didn't want to do right at the entrance of the airport, so we're actually looking at behind the facility at 3820, the old Piedmont Advantage Credit Union. It's also behind the 3820 building. You can see there with the red arrow. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? So what we're talking about is here, it's actually two issues. We're handling the rental car companies. We can maintain our existing rental car company, Avis Budget. Hertz has been operating the airport for years, but they actually, during COVID, shut down, but they've actually been paying rent because they don't want to lose their spot. But to give you an idea, the kind of revenue that we get from Avis Budget is over $117,000 a year. So what it is they pay for not only spots, parking spots, for return spots or ready spots, but they also pay for counter space. But the majority of it is we get 10% of gross revenue they operate from the airport. They could go anywhere in the county. They wouldn't have to pay. I don't want to tell them this, but they wouldn't have to pay that, but it's a benefit to locating at the airport. So we want to keep them at the airport. So that's why it's so essential to offer services such as the rental car or the car wash station. They create jobs here in the county. And it's not and the reason I said they could operate from anywhere almost is because it's not typically someone flies in, then rents a car. It's mostly the community that comes out to the airport and rents a car and then leaves from there. Big weeks are coming up with Wake Forest graduation. We killed it with around Christmas time with all the rental car, the budget trucks that Amazon rented from them. So we get 10% of that. So it's great for the county. And also, since we're building this car wash, we thought that we could also accommodate our vehicle fleet here at the county, as well as possibly the school system. From my understanding, we have a mobile service we pay for, but we could do this since it's so close to our vehicle fleet for our maintenance and fuel. We could be right there at the airport. We could wash larger equipment. We're envisioning a full service where you pull in for laser wash, where it does not the brushes and all that kind of stuff, but it would, everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say laser wash, high pressure water. But we could have a full service, one of those, and then one real large bay that you could walk around and spray, as well as another one for backup. We might have to do some value engineering to lower the cost and maybe just do one of those. But we ran some numbers, and I think it could be beneficial to the airport. So do you want me to get in some of the operating cost of that, or do you want me, no? Okay. I'm sure Dr. Martin's going to ask me here in a minute. So we issued a design build RFQ. WC Construction Company was selected. Staff negotiated a fee of $84,000 for design phase of the car wash project, and we expect the total budget to be hopefully under $1 million. Funding will be coming from the airport's department's revenue, so we're not looking at any grants. We'd use our reserve. And what's great about this, not so great, but this is one of those things that we generated the reserve, and now we're going to apply it towards a project. But this project will actually provide some revenue coming back to the airport, then we can apply it towards some of our other projects. So we recommend execution of the agreement to provide design and pre-construction services. We need to amend the 2022-23 budget ordinance and then amend the 2018 capital project ordinance.
So when we use our vehicles or the school district uses theirs, washes them, then there'll be a fee paid back to the airport?
That's the idea. You would have to have a card or some proximity card, so every time you used it, and just running some numbers, if we charge, I understand that it varies. If we're charging $4 a car, let me just make sure my numbers are right. What I envisioned was the rental car company averages between 15 and 50 cars a day that they wash. So throwing in 30 cars a day. The sheriff's averages about 20 cars a day. If you take it, they're allowed to wash their vehicles twice a month. We got about 700 vehicles, including the school system. If they were just washed once a month, that'd be about 23 washes a day. So we get 73 washes per day. And the cost includes chemical, maintenance, water, electric. We would reclaim the water. We'd install one of those systems. So we're looking at about a $2.40 for capital recovery. If it was $4, $2.40 would be for capital recovery. So it would take us about 15 years to pay it back, the capital. And so was that what you asked?
Yes. Well, yeah. I was asking a simpler question, but the more complicated answer was good. Thank you. I mean, that was good.
Okay. I don't mean to complicate things, but. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Mark?
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Very good. All right. Thank you, Mark. Agenda item 12 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and, let me back up. I got my ARPA stuff. I am sorry, Miss Aisha. I knew I was going to do that. We've got two ARPA contracts for consideration, and Aisha Carter, our ARPA administrator, will come up and review them. You've got an agreement with the YWCA, and then you've got one with Second Harvest Food Bank. Aisha Carter.
I'm glad you didn't forget about me.
I almost did, but sorry.
Good afternoon, County Commissioners. First, I would like to recognize we have the YWCA here, VP Operations, Greg Fagg, and VP of Finance, Nancy Major. I'm here in support of the funding for the YWCA. This agenda item will provide ARPA funding in the amount not to exceed $85,000 to purchase a minivan and repair 5 buses for the YWCA Best Choice Center, a year-round academic enrichment program for low-income children located at 1031 Highland Avenue, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This program uses certified teachers and bilingual staff and has been serving the needs of the greater Forsyth County community since 1977, serving primarily minority children, 90% African-American, and 10% Hispanic. Any questions in regards to that?
No, I just wanted to tell them thank you.
The next agenda item would provide ARPA funding to Second Harvest Food Bank of Northwest North Carolina in the amount not to exceed $152,250 to support its Providence Culinary Training Program. Funding will be used to fund 3 staff to support 78 students training to enhance their culinary skills and help them pursue better paying opportunities. It's a 13-week hands-on experience and includes a 1-week internship. Any questions in regards to that? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Aisha. Very good. All right, I'll jump back to Mr. Berman with Emergency Services. Item 12 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and East Coast Oxygen and Hydro Testing Incorporated to provide medical oxygen cylinder exchange and rental. Mr. Rich Berman.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Back in February, we let a competitive bid for the exchange and rental of oxygen cylinders. We had a sole response come back. That came back at around $50,000. A total of $75,000 is projected for FY '24. I should note that that is roughly one half of what we are paying right now for a similar service from a different vendor. So we are looking forward to your approval and moving forward on this. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
It's good news.
Yeah. And you'll see more of Mr. Berman. He, fairly new employee with us, but long history in logistics and emergency services as well. And so he's doing great work.
Thank you, sir.
Are you familiar with the Red Star and the Yellow Star program that EMS has?
No, sir, I'm not.
I was at a meeting yesterday, and this Red Star that is placed on businesses, residences, identifies problems if you're on the way to pick somebody up who's sick or their house is on fire. The Red Star will give you information such as a person who has dementia, what his name is, what special needs he might have, and you know about that before you ever get there. And I thought, God, I had no idea, but there's a map that now EMS has, and I think it'd be interesting if you could find out for the people in the company, it's in your organization as well, what the details are, because to me it's innovative. You get information, you can look at it on the way to the problem. I mean, or you may be going to someplace you don't know has a problem, and it's already written out for you. Thank you.
Yes, sir, we can look into that for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Reg. Agenda item 13 is a resolution awarding and authorizing execution of a contract with Miller Tree Service for at-risk tree removal services at Forsyth County Parks. Constantine, our business manager with the park system, will review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Hopefully, being under number 13 is not a bad sign. The item for your consideration today is a resolution awarding and authorizing execution of a contract with Miller Tree Service Incorporated for risk tree removal services at our county parks. In terms of purchasing process we followed, we issued a request for proposal on March 6th directly to 15 local vendors, in addition to general solicitation from city-county purchases. After due advertisement, 2 bids were received and opened by city-county purchasing department on April the 12th. Miller Tree Services was selected as the firm with the lowest cost, responsible and responsive to provide the needed services. The total contract price is not to exceed $115,000. Most of the contracted cost, if approved, and namely $100,000, will be paid with funds approved by Forsyth County Board of Commissioners as part of the 2022 PayGo project. The additional $15,000, as it applies to Triad Park, will be paid with funds approved in the general funds budget for fiscal year 2023. And with this, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
You may just want to mention why, so that'll share the cost with Guilford.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the reasons, because we get half the cost from Guilford County.
Quick question. Park staff will identify trees to be removed.
Yes, actually, our staff did a great job. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the contract, but they literally identified every single tree, and in the RFP, they even had the coordinates as well, because the vendors that participated in the bid, they had to essentially provide a proposal for every single tree that was part of the RFP.
So a lot of these were part of that ash tree blight that occurred. Isn't that true?
Right, but also we looked specifically at mostly dead trees, I would say. They were like next to assets, pathways, building and structures. They were like big and kind of difficult for us to handle in-house. So that's why kind of the reason to contract them out.
Yeah, these are
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Constantine.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Let me bring up Steve Brenniger first, because Kirby's got 3 items after that. Sorry, Kirby. I know please be patient. So Steve Brenniger is going to review the resolution awarding and authorizing a contract for the purchase of 2 Class 3 type ambulances. Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Forsyth County Emergency Services Department is requesting the purchase of 2 new Class Type 3 ambulances, which will be additions to the fleet, so grow it from 25 to 27 ambulances. The Emergency Services Director has determined that the status of the ambulance fleet is not optimal, with an average of 8 to 10 ambulances of the 25 currently down for repairs for a variety of reasons. The board adopted a resolution awarding a contract to Northwestern Emergency Vehicles and for the purchase of one Class 3 Type 3 ambulance last year, is boarded July in 22. But the adopted resolution was for the purchase of additional one ambulance at Northwestern, the same bid price for a period of 3 years, with an increase of allowable is 5%. But the Northwestern Emergency Vehicles requested 7%, which would make it not usable. We will have to rebid that out next year. At the time of the bid, Emergency Services opted to pursue the purchase of one ambulance for Northwestern Vehicles because of the low bidder could deliver the ambulance within 150 days of once it received a chassis. The second lowest bidder was 425 days out. So we decided at that point, along with the Emergency Services Director at that time, to go ahead and make the purchase. And due to the ongoing shortages of available ambulances in the market, the Emergency Services Department sought out pricing for ambulances meeting the county specifications from a competitive bidding group, basically HGAC, which allows us to buy through state or their contract pricing. Northwestern Emergency Vehicles submitted a total price of $537,214, which would be the purchase of two ambulances through the HGAC Houston Galveston state contract. There is, however, a $1,000 fee to use that contract based on, I'm not sure exactly how they formulate it, but my calculations, if you add it to what they were, it'd be like 0.345, I think, percent, less than 0.5% for like an interest charge. Let's see here. The two ambulances will be ordered from Northwestern Emergency Vehicle upon a board approval. Estimated delivery dates around June 15th. This purchase aligns with the Emergency Services Director's current strategic plan to increase the number of ambulances to a minimum of 32 units over the next few years as system demand. The county's General Services Director and Emergency Services Director recommend the purchasing of these two ambulances from Northwestern Emergency Vehicles. Any questions?
Only question I've got is that what happens if they can't deliver within 150 days of getting the chassis? I didn't read the contract. I don't know what kind of penalty there is, if there is one.
Well, be honest with you, sir, when the contract was done, there was no reference to penalties if it didn't get done in 150 days.
Because obviously a reason to go with them was that you didn't want to wait over a year.
Yeah.
And obviously 150 days is a good thing and it needs to be done, but if that's not honored and that doesn't happen,
yeah,
that's...
And that has been our primary issue in that marketplace right now. It's really difficult because, as you remember, we bought some law enforcement sedans.
Yep.
Board approved it at the price. They came back to us and said, well, the price is higher. And it is an unacceptable marketplace that we're in right now around those kinds of issues. And I look forward to the day when demand side of it or the supply side of it adjusts enough that we can be where we need to be on it. But right now, unfortunately, it's just, if
that's
you can get
that's also one reason why they say upon the arrival of the chassis, 150 days from that point, because the chassis itself, like Dudley was talking about, the cars there, you're pretty much at their, mercy. If it's, that's why I say they say 150 days from the receipt of the chassis. Because they might could order chassis and it may take a year to get, may take 6 months to get, may take 8 months.
I understand that.
That's kind of a reason why we do the verbiage 150 days upon approval of the chassis. Because the box part is always easy to do. It doesn't take
My
as long.
sense is, and that I have I've not read anything or whatever that explains any of this, but if you think about it, all these automobile manufacturers are in the process of converting their factories over to the EV stuff. And so they're making business decisions about what to build, making sure they're building things with high profit margins and all this stuff because they're going through all the expense to go to EV. And it just is, it's got things really complicated right now. And
they also are trying to design ambulances that'll run off electric batteries as well, but I think they're maybe a few years out from making that sustainable. There's all kinds of
we're caught right now because they're phasing out, internal combustion stuff, and they're building up EV. EV's not available for us yet, so you can't buy that, and you're paying a premium for this old technology right now. So we're in a tough marketplace, and we'll probably be there for 3 or 4 years, I would think.
Also with EVs, there's a, sustainable, as far as charger stations to deal with and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You'll probably be seeing that pretty soon.
Yeah, and if you think about it, automobile manufacturers, the public sector stuff is a very stable industry. They know exactly how many police cars and how many ambulances they're going to sell in a given year, but it's a low profit margin arena for them too. So we're really jammed up right now.
Sometimes you get lucky, and some of the bigger manufacturers will actually order extra units, and sometimes you can buy one of them units, stuff like that. But that's probably the only thing keeping everything running halfway decent.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Steve.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it. All right, so Kirby's got 3 items. Item 14 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to an agreement with Rico USA for on-site print and mail services. And then he's got 2 property matters, and I'll just turn it over to you for all of that.
Thank you, sir.
We need to get you a little step stool.
I
don't we?
apologize. Somebody told me. It's been up here. I couldn't see the screen.
Yeah, I
Good
think you can adjust it down.
I didn't want to break it. It does. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. I appreciate the opportunity to bring these items to you today. As background on the print and mail item, you may recall that in June of 2022, the Board authorized a 5-year agreement for managed print and mail services with Rico USA. Thank you, Tim. The total not to exceed amount of that contract was $1.9 million. That contract includes charges for a couple of different things. Thank you. A couple of different things. It's the on-site labor that we have in the print and mail room. It's the production equipment we have down there, the software that runs them, and there's a courier vehicle. The contract also includes funds for something called clicks. And so clicks are a fee that we get every time one of the copiers spits out a piece of paper. And if it's a black and white copy, it is a certain rate. If it's a color copy, it's a certain rate. And then those funds are in the contract. They're estimates that are really based on our historical production data. And so you can see a black and white click is 0.0054 per piece, and a color click is 0.0458 per piece. And those were actually bid as part of our managed services RFP, so those are competitive rates. What we're seeing in the service center right now, that's what we call the print shop, is an increase in color copies over the past year. And I think a lot of that has been related to the election. But since it's a little bit of an end-of-the-year cleanup type of item, I think that we might overrun our fiscal 23 contract by around $5,000. We're not sure because, again, those are variable rates that we're really estimating. We've got 2 months to go before we see kind of where those end up. So this request is to add $10,000 to each year of the contract, just in case the click charges continue in that vein, that they continue to overrun our estimates. Hopefully, that's not money that we'll end up spending. And so we're not asking for additional funding, just to raise the not to exceed value of the contract in case those click charges go over what were our estimates in the contract. You can see a little bit of our production statistics to the right. I always like the opportunity to brag on the print shop a little bit. The amount of work they do is tremendous. You can see in fiscal 22, our black and whites were $173,000 a month, 57,000 color, and those color copies have gone up. Those are averages per month in fiscal 23. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Well, do we know, for example, what department, I'm sure we do, because it's all electronically, I'm sure, submitted. We know where that increase, we should know exactly where that increase in color copies is coming from, not maybe the Board of Elections, but wherever. I mean,
we do.
And I think that might be, that's that's something that in terms with habits and use and who is the consumer and why it's being done and what you print.
Yes, sir.
And obviously, a lot of reports we get, we probably don't need in color. And quite frankly, we're interested in the basic facts and those kind of issues. That's an increase. I don't know what your history looks like if you go back, earlier, a few more years, FY 21, 20. But that's a pretty big lick and increase in something that is basically about 350% more cost to do color copies.
Yes,
I mean, when you're going from a half a cent to 4.6 cents is a pretty big increase.
I really struggle when I step back and looked at this. I said, do I take something to the board that takes care of this for fiscal 23, and then maybe each year thereafter we just hope that there was an occurrence around the election. I think, and it's not that maybe it was Board of Elections, a lot of it is election-related material. A lot of it is library-driven material when they do programs, especially for children. They think, obviously that those are better in color. We always encourage departments to be responsible and to print what they can in black and white. At the end of the day, we don't position ourselves as the authority in what they print in black and white. So it's a little bit of a dance with that. And so I struggled, do I just try to square this up for 1 year and then look at it for the next 4 and try to, either hope it's not an issue or try to control it differently? And so I kind of brought the worst case scenario to you just as a package today, just to be upfront. I didn't want to come back each year with sort of the same problem. So we can get more data on that. We certainly do have that. You're right, sir. And we can show you the trends there. Yes, sir.
Well, I think I have no problem covering this year and getting through it, but I think that operationally, we don't need to see it, but I think we ought to be staying within budget in this. And I think it doesn't need to be something that's running over because of habits. I mean, this is about creating some different habits in terms of things that are printed.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And we agree with you. There are things that come out of there that we certainly don't think should be in color. But again, we, on some level, defer to the department and asking them to be responsible. And, if they say that, no, this for our operations needs to be in color, it's coming out in color right now. So we can certainly look at that differently and dig into it more.
Communicate to management where the players are. We work through that. We also default to black and white, don't we? I mean, you've got the ability within the system to put some system defaults in too. So if I go to the copier right now, pop something in it?
It's a little different. So if you go to the copiers and departments, it will default to black and white, but that's not, of course, not part of this. This is when you submit a print job, folks will request. And, a lot of times I think it's an education piece, because if you request something, let's say it has the seal on it. It's the only thing on the copy that's in color, that actually is a color click. And so it's a little bit of an education thing for departments that we need to get out. And so I'll own that, and we can do a better job of that. So I'm happy to reframe this as a 1-year change, and then we can, from a management perspective, work on controlling that within budget. And again, we may not need the funds this year. I hope we don't.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? I didn't mean to. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. First property matter for your consideration. This is at Horizons Park, and it may look familiar. Roger and Julie Harger have offered to purchase a strip of land at Horizons Park. It totals roughly 0.6 acres. I'm going to refer to it as the subject property. I sound like Chris Murphy through this presentation. They have offered $5,500 for that piece of property that's shaded in red on the screen. So to orient you, that's the Harger's house off of Memorial Industrial School. The park maintenance office, the shed is to the right, and the dog park is to the right of that picture. The Frisbee Golf Course is to the south. You may recall that the Hargers previously acquired a small strip of land from the county in 2016. You can kind of see it off to the side right here. They did that really to resolve an encroachment issue around their driveway. At the time, they did want to purchase the subject property also. But at the time, the Parks and Recreation Department recommended not doing that because we just didn't really know what we were going to do with the property. And so we didn't bring that to the board for consideration. The Hargers have asked us to revisit that with the board. And really the change there is, according to Parks and Rec, there are no development plans for this piece of property. And there are no concerns from that department with a sale of the property at this time. From the Hargers' point of view, they want to acquire that property to give themselves a little more buffer.
you got the park maintenance area to the right. I think they're looking over here, and should this be developed with something down the road, they feel like if they own this, it gives them a little bit of buffer between that. So that's really where they're coming from. It allows them to kind of use a more natural property line, which is the hedgerow here, as a really delineating factor or line between the two pieces of property. They believe their offer is based on the per acre land value of similar agriculturally zoned lots in the area. 10 to 12,000 an acre for ag land up there is probably about right. If the board does desire to move forward, again, this is an upset bid situation, so it would be put out for upset bid at about half an acre. It is a property that could theoretically stand on its own. And so they are aware of that, that it could go out. And theoretically, you could have an upset bid on that. I've talked to planning. This will need to go through their minor subdivision process because it's less than 10 acres. So let's say in terms of process, if you wanted to move forward with it, they've made their deposit. It could be published for upset bid. If they were the last and highest bidder, we would work with them to do a plat, a subdivision plat, and bring that back to you with the last and highest offer to show exactly what that property would look like in the dimensions. Because again, if the planning department, for whatever reason, didn't approve the minor subdivision, then the sale would not go through. So after the upset bid process, again, those two items would come back to you for consideration. So it's a little bit different than some of the property matters that we deal with. Again, it's a landowner really just making a request, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Yes, sir. Is that 16 acres total that they have? That's what it looks like.
No, sir. Some of the notes on the geodata, I'm not sure I could explain what they are. That is not an acreage.
Okay, well, do they own, what's the amount of acreage in their house and lot area?
I apologize, sir. I actually don't know. I should have brought that with me, and I didn't.
I'll ask you to do this. Check with the tax office and see what value they have placed on the land that the house sits on. Because it got, as I remember, the land value of a lot or where the house is, and the house is two different values.
It is a little bit different because from an ag per acre value, it lines up with the 10 or 12,000. But it also has an increased level of value because it's what tax refers to as a home site, and that adds to the value of that. I'm not qualified to talk about the differences in those two things, but I think because it does have a dwelling on it, it increases that value. So I certainly could ask tax to give their opinion of a unimproved acreage value in the area.
Well, what the home site value is exactly what I would like to see, because they're asking for a specific piece of land that they think will, whatever they think.
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to know what that home site value is.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. Last property matter for your consideration. Do Dreams Inc. Has offered to purchase 0.56 acres of real property that's located on Carver School Road. They've made a $20,000 offer for that. The property was obtained through a tax foreclosure auction, and it's been owned by the county since 2017. You can see it on the right side of your screen. This is Carver School Road. This is the school system bus lot. The Texas Peat facility is just up the road here. Property has a tax value of around $11,000. It's vacant and unimproved. We mow it. We spend about 25 hours a year maintaining it. It costs us about $1,000 a year to do that, not a whole lot. The lot is located, again, across from the school system bus lot. The school system, based on my past conversations with them, does not have a need or interest in that property. I asked the bidder, like I normally do, I said, well, what do you want to do with it? And they say, well, I want to build 1 to 2 houses on it. A lot of that will be wrapped up in working with the planning department and what a recombination plat of those 4 lots would look like. How can you situate houses on it? It does slope on the north side by about 10 feet. So that lot 10A there is probably not buildable. 7, 8, and 9 here are. And so they would need to really work through that process if they were the successful bidder and the board desired to proceed with that sale. Again, it is an upset bid process, so if the board wanted to proceed, we would do our best to market that property and make folks aware of it. We want to make the neighborhood aware that it's for sale. And number one, so folks know, and two, to see if there's anybody that has a higher offer for you to consider. I'll just quickly note that in the past, it's been sort of our unofficial policy to bring offers for your consideration on surplus property that was half or more of the tax value. It's kind of where we've been in the past. And so really, we changed that a little bit with our conversations when it came to Kevin Drive. Now, you may remember that a month or two ago. And so when I've gotten calls on our remaining surplus properties, which it's really just this one in Kevin Drive, we're really about out of inventory here. I've told the bidder that. I said, as a broker, my job is to bring the board an offer if I get one, but they have really set kind of this threshold for what they want to hear in terms of an offer. And so this is the result of that. I normally don't negotiate with folks when they want to make an offer if it meets that threshold, but I did in this case, and it got a little bit of a higher offer. And so you got a $20,000 offer, tax value is $11,000. And so I want to make sure I bring that to you. I believe it meets a little bit of the criteria we talked about a few months ago. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Do we have any holding cost on it much?
I'm sorry?
Are you holding cost,
About $1,000 a year. Okay. It's not a whole lot. We're mowing it. It takes us about a half an hour. Longer to drive the trailer down there, I think.
Okay. Any other questions for Kirby?
One question. I was just kind of doing a Dr. Google search on New Dreams, and they seem to be, which I don't have a problem with, kind of small, more company, and maybe out of High Point, blah, blah, blah. But I was just, wondering what their background is more in depth around home building, if there is any interest in something on the affordable range, because that seems to be the dilemma we have in this county, and especially within the city, i.e. Carver School Road.
Yes, ma'am. And so there are probably different approaches to looking at this. And so I come from just a pure real estate sales perspective. And so I could certainly expand that and get more folks involved to look at it if that's what the board wants to do. In the past, we basically advertise these online, and they're available to anybody to bid on them. And on the bid form, we kind of talk about the process and the recommended amounts and this and that. But they're typically, and typically what we say is, who are you, what are you offering, and what do you want to do with it, is kind of what we've asked in the past. And I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, or if I could get additional information for you.
It does answer my question. As a commissioner, I would appreciate if the question could be asked to this builder, and I would just highlight across the country, local governments are trying to figure out how to deal with this housing dilemma, and you're just having to think differently about, government, public-owned property, what you used to do with it. Now you may not be doing with it because there is a very stressful problem around housing.
In my experience with the surplus properties is you've got investors that are going to come in and try and turn a profit. I'm not sure, I definitely get where you're coming from there, Commissioner. I'm happy to ask them additional information if you'd like. I'm not. I think the board can place whatever conditions they want to on the sale process. That's probably more of an attorney question. I want to get out of my depth on that.
Thank you.
Yes,
Other questions? I think we're good.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, this is closing it out pretty much. Item 18 is a resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor in collected amount of $560.80 from the Board of Equalization and Review. And that is it, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. So for the business, I'd say we stand adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, not quite. I would like to say something, if that's all right with you.
Go ahead.
We all in this room have something we can never, ever, under any circumstance, put a price on. And we're all in this room very happy and very proud to have what we've got. And none of us in this room would take no matter what the price would be, take anything for what our moms have done for us. So this coming Sunday, mothers are going to be honored. And I hasten to point out that every commissioner on this board, with the exception of the men, are women, and they're all mothers. And I think we ought to give them a salute, and I think we ought to salute those who are mothers in here and who are watching on television. And adopted, it's nothing, no big deal, but I would move that we salute all mothers from the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners this Sunday.
Well, I'll second that. I think, very good.
Can we vote? I've got one vote.
If it wasn't for Mother, we couldn't
Well,
be
it's a briefing, but I think on this one, we can say all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Done, all right.